All right, hello and welcome to another Expert Inside interview. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP, online sales magazine and Pipeliner CRM, joining you as usual from sunny San Diego. And today, I'm delighted to be joined by Dray Baldwin, who is over in South Florida, equally sunny, I'm sure. How you doing, Dray?
I'm doing excellent, John. Thank you for having me on. How are you?
Yeah, great, absolutely. And Dre built Work on Your Game, an operating system we're going to talk about in a moment to turn disciplined execution into dominance. 4 times TEDx speaker, a 41-time author. I just had to check that before we came on air. So that's an amazing amount of output. And also, you played pro basketball for 9 years. And today
Yeah.
you help experts and entrepreneurs install mindset systems and strategies to scale from 6 to 7 figures with presence and power. So, Dre, just to kick things off, what inspired you to develop on the Work on Your Game operating system? And tell me a little bit about how much was it inspired by your journey from like sitting on the bench in high school to playing professional basketball for 9 years?
Well, it was all about that. So that last part there. So where Work on Your Game came from was just a saying actually that I said to some basketball players who were following me on YouTube, probably about 2009, because they were just asking about tips to get better at basketball. And in a video where I was going on a bit of a rant, I was explaining to the players that they were watching too much YouTube instead of actually practicing. And I said to them, stop watching me on YouTube and go work on your game. And people really loved that phrase so much that they were repeating the phrase back to me. So about a year later, when I was just thinking of, let me come up with a brand name for all this stuff that I'm doing, I said, work on your game is perfect because it encompasses everything I was doing in sports, but also where I saw myself going in the future, which was extracting the mindset piece and eventually into business. So that's where it came from. And it was inspired by, yes, you have to know the game that you're in, John, and develop your game so that you can play it at the highest level, so you can make it, quote unquote, in anything that you're doing.
I love that piece though, by telling people to go out and play more and watch less YouTube.
Yeah.
I think that goes for people across a lot of different areas. Need to be doing more and watching less. But so you describe your operating system. You describe it as for top 2%. So explain what makes it different from, say, other traditional, self-help or self-development or other processes.
Well, the most important thing is that it comes from someone who played in a game where you have to be in the top 2% to even get in, which is professional sports. And yes, there's a baseline amount of talent that you have to get in, of course. Everybody understands that. But there are probably 10 times as many people who have the talent, John, than actually get in.
Sure.
So for every one guy you see playing in the NFL or MLB or NBA, there's 10 to 20 who are just as talented, but they didn't get in. So you have to figure out how to actually get in the game. Now, if you're super talented, if you're LeBron James or Kobe Bryant or Derek Jeter, maybe you're so talented that you'll get in no matter what.
Sure.
But if you come from where I come from, I played at Division III college. It was not in the cards for me to make it as a pro athlete. You had to be disciplined. You had to be strategic. You had to be systematic about getting your opportunity and keeping it, because not everybody who gets in stays in. A lot of athletes get in, but they don't stay in. So
Right.
all of those pieces are what make it work. And if it can work in sports, then it can work in business.
And so explain to me then the difference between working on your game and just working hard. Because a lot of people will say, oh, you got the talent, it's all about the hard work, just really work hard. But what you were just saying a moment ago wasn't just working hard. It was you being strategic, etc. So what's the distinction between working on your game and just working hard?
Well, working hard, the metaphor I like to use, John, is that hard work is necessary for success, but hard work is to success what salt, pepper, and oregano are to a sandwich. Is that they do make it better, but if all you have is salt, pepper, and oregano, you're still gonna be hungry. All right, you still need the sandwich. All right, that's the system. That's the process. That is, what are we working on? Why are we working on it? And where is it supposed to take us? So working on your game is about, first of all, understanding what game you're actually in. A lot of people don't know what game they're in. And if you don't know, then it doesn't matter how hard you work, because you don't have a direction of where you're going. So working on your game is about understanding the direction and then engineering the discipline and the systems so that your hard work fits into a process that is producing a desired outcome. Hard work is not the car. Hard work is the engine.
Yeah.
And a lot of people treat hard work as if it's the vehicle. It's not the vehicle. You put hard work into the vehicle. And when you get that equation wrong, you can work really hard and you'll produce something. You'll produce a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, but you will not produce results. So engineering discipline and engineering systems is about knowing where we taking this hard work.
Yeah. And so let's talk about the four pillars and starting with discipline. You say showing up every day to do the work. I mean, how can you, for somebody who maybe struggles with consistency and stuff, what would you say to them?
Well, is that if you're going to be a professional, number one thing you have to do is find a way, by hook or by crook, to show up consistently and do your job. Because the definition of a professional is a person who does something as their main paid occupation, John. So if you're doing something as your main paid occupation, as soon as you take money from someone, a boss, a customer, whoever, there's an expectation of delivery. And if you don't deliver, then they call that a scam and you can end up in jail. So you have to actually show up and deliver when you're getting paid. And even on the days that you don't feel like it, you show up. Now, what's the difference between the pro and the amateur is that the pro finds a way to keep showing up even when they don't feel like it, whereas the amateur has the luxury of not showing up when they don't feel like it because the amateur is not being paid. Therefore, no one can hold the amateur accountable. A pro can be held accountable by that contract or by the money that you accepted. So we have a concept over here called the third day. And the third day is that day when you really don't feel like working. Your back is hurting. It's cold outside. Your kid kept you up all night. You didn't sleep too well. You're cold. You're tired, whatever. How you show up on that day is what makes you a pro, because it's easy to show up, John, when you feel good. All right. Everybody shows up when they feel good and everything's working. All right. You closed your last 10 sales calls. It's easy to show up then. Now, what about when you missed your last 10 sales calls, or the leads are coming in slowly, or you haven't gotten any great results in the last 3 weeks and everything's looking terrible? How do you show up that day? All right. That's how we find out who the true pros are. The true pros show up when it's not going well and when things are not easy. And the convenient pros, they show up only when things are going great.
So what did you do personally, like early in your career, to motivate yourself to always show up on those days, say like the days like you described when you absolutely everything was out of whack and you really, really didn't want to show up?
Well, I had a lot of days like that when things weren't working for me, when I didn't have any tangible success despite my best efforts. And there was never a day, John, that I didn't want to show up because I had enough gas in the tank to keep going.
Right.
When I say gas in the tank, let me explain what I mean metaphorically. Gas in the tank is what is driving you. Like, what's your real reason? Some people call that your why. What is your reason for doing what you're doing? For some people, it's family. For some people, it's just personal accomplishment. For other people, it's I want to make a certain amount of money. For other people, it's some type of negative thing they're trying to avoid. For me, I'm a competitor, so I'm always looking to compete. And in sports, it's the essence of competition, and it's the closest thing to a meritocracy in competition that you're ever going to get, because sports are measured by a scoreboard and not by people. All right. People are subjective and they have opinions. All right. Scoreboards don't. All right. Scoreboards just tell you the truth. And in the sports world, of course, you're competing against the other team that you play against. I was also competing against my teammates. Okay. I want to out-achieve my college teammates. I want to go further than they go. I want to go further than the guys on other teams who I played against. And I want to prove that all this time that I put into basketball actually paid off into something by getting to the highest level of the game. And it's the same thing in entrepreneurship, in business, whereas the scoreboards are different because not everybody has the same scoreboard.
Sure.
Right? Some entrepreneurs are just trying to make as much money as possible. Others, they want to make money, but they're also trying to have an impact, and they're willing to sacrifice some money for more impact. So not everybody has the same scoreboard in business, but at the same time, you are still looking to compete. All right. How can I have an impact? How can I help as many people? How can I serve the people who I do serve on the highest possible level? So the gas in my tank has always been about competition, maximizing myself. So competing against the best version of myself, while at the same time knowing that best version of myself can probably beat all of these other people out here. But I look around, hey, right now I might not be winning. Right. So what do I have to do to win the game?
I know, absolutely. And it's so important because, especially because we live in such a distracted world today, and where people are always looking for shortcuts and they're all of that kind of stuff. So I think a lot of people have lost that art of discipline, have lost that, and probably lost their why, or haven't even figured out their why yet. So I think that's a profound point. And you also talk about confidence, and you say, our problem, too much confidence is not your problem. What do you mean by that?
Well, if you really think about it, a lot of times, well, I'll tell you something that most people don't think about is that if you ask most people, what's one internal trait you want to have more of? Most people would say they want to be more confident, want to believe in themselves more, have healthier self-image, higher level of self-esteem. Was a good idea, because if you have more confidence, theoretically, you will show up a different way. People will respond to you differently. You will try more things. And assuming you have any level of ability, you'll probably achieve more things. So it makes sense to have more confidence. The challenge is most people don't know how to go about getting confidence. They think it's just about, well, just tell myself to be more confident, or there's some book they can read or some trick they can get, or that they can fake it till they make it, which is a trick, an oxymoron trick. It's not a real thing. Yeah. Because if you tell yourself you're faking it, subconscious mind understands eventually you have to stop faking. So you can only fake but for so long. Instead, what you want to do is become it. And the framework we use for this is what we call the super you. The super you is about you being still you, but at the highest possible level of yourself. And the key to the super you is not the add-ons that give you more confidence. That's what most people focus on when they're trying to become more of anything, is what do I add on? What can I do differently? What can I do additionally to what I'm already doing? When the secret is actually taken away. It's elimination. And the key thing that you eliminate to step up your confidence, John, is you have to give yourself permission to stop being the person you've always been. Just the permission to step away and not keep being the same person that, wait a minute, I lost my spot. Are you still here?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, all good.
Where am I? Okay, here. Okay, I lost my, okay, I see you. So is no longer being the person that you've always been, and stop conforming to being that same person. And when I talk about that, some people say, okay, I get the whole thing about being more confident, Dre, but what if I have too much confidence? What if I go overboard and I start offending people, or I start putting myself out there in a way that puts people off because of how I am? And I'll ask questions. I'll ask this question to audiences all the time. I'll say, okay, I want you to think of all the times in the last year when you didn't have enough confidence and it was really bothering you. You missed out on an opportunity. You saw a chance to speak up. You didn't speak. You saw a chance to throw your hat in the ring. You kept your hat on your head. There was somewhere you could have made a move and you didn't make a move, and you're still kicking yourself about it now. I want you to think of all the times that's happened in the last year. Everybody in the room can think of many times that's happened. Then I say, okay, now that all of you got that, now I want you to think about all the times in the last year when you had something to say and you said not only that, but more than that. Or you saw an opportunity and you took it, where there was something that you wanted to do and you did it. And all of these, I want you to think of the times that all of those things went wrong, when it hurt you. When you think of all the times when too much confidence bothered you, got in your way, slowed you down, or hurt you in your life or in your business. And I say it in a real sarcastic way, but everybody gets the point and they all start laughing in spite of themselves. Yeah. Because, John, they realize that they can't think of one. I said, I'll give you 10 years. All right, last 10 years, think of one time too much confidence got in your way. Most people can't come up with one example, because most people don't know what it feels like to have too much confidence. Know what it feels like to have not enough. Yep. And the thing is, what people say is, well, I don't want to go too far before they've even gone far enough yet. They haven't even done the average. So I'll give you an example, metaphorical example of this. I knew a friend of mine, a female friend once. We lived in the same building. She wanted me to help her with some fitness stuff. She knew I was an athlete. And can you take me to the gym in the building and just show me how to use some of the equipment so I can work out on my own? I said, all right, cool. She said, Dre, before we go, I want you to know that I don't want to be one of those bodybuilder girls that has all these muscles and looks like a man and all this stuff. And I said to her, you haven't even gone to the gym yet. How about you just show up to the gym 2 days in a row first before you worry about having too many muscles? You don't have, that's the least of your problems, having too many muscles. How about you get some muscles first? Get one muscle. And that's exactly what people do with confidence. They say, well, I don't want to go too far. Right? Wait a minute. You're not even at the normal level yet. How are you going to go too far? All right, let's get back to the baseline first. Then we'll worry about overdoing it. Yeah, no, that's so true. I mean, it's so funny that sometimes, like, we focus so far in the future, or focus on the outcome and stuff, right, and realize that the journey is important. Is just as important. Talk to me about mental toughness, and what's the difference between mental errors and physical errors? That's a really fascinating one. Yeah. So mental toughness is all about how do you maintain the things we talked about, your discipline and your confidence, even though things may not be working out the way you want them to work out. Because, John, you know as well as I do, and your listeners know, that no matter how skilled, talented, resourced, or ambitious you may be, there will come a time, multiple times, when things are not working. Despite your best efforts, despite your best laid plans, things are just not working the way you want them to work. Mental toughness is about, can you continue to show up even though things aren't working? All right. Can you stay confident, believing that it's going to work out? Can you stay disciplined and keep following the process and sticking to the plan, even though sticking to the plan and believing in yourself hasn't worked yet? All right. You might as well quit. And this is where most people quit. They say, well, I've stuck to the plan and I did everything, quote unquote, right. It didn't work, so I might as well give up. That's a lack of mental toughness. Mental toughness is, do I keep showing up the next day, even though I still haven't gotten the outcome yet? And you were asking the difference between mental errors and physical errors. So physical errors are going to happen simply because our bodies won't always, and when I say our bodies, I mean this in a metaphorical sense, things don't always turn up the way we want them to. For example, if you're in sales, you have a sales conversation, you go through the whole sales process the proper way, and you make the offer and your prospect doesn't buy. Sometimes that's going to happen. Sometimes they just don't have the money. Sometimes they have to talk to their wife. They really need to talk to the CFO. They really need to get approval, and you can't close the deal right now, even though you did everything right. Sometimes that occurs. That's what I call a physical error. That's a physical error, metaphorically speaking. A mental error is when you did not properly vet your prospects. You didn't pre-frame them the right way. You didn't knock out all the possible objections before the call happened. If you didn't do all those things, and then you end up missing the sale, that's a mental error because you missed something in your own process. And then in the sports world, this is something I learned in the sports world at a young age. My dad used to coach my youth when I played baseball for a couple of years. I wasn't very good at baseball, but I played. And my dad was the coach, and he would say to us, he said, if you make physical errors, that's okay. Sometimes you'll make a throw that just misses the first baseman. Sometimes you'll drop the ball. Sometimes the ball will roll under your legs. Those are physical errors. Mental error is, you know that there's a runner on first, so if you get the ball, you should be throwing it to second. But then you get the ball and you throw it to first base. Right. You're not paying attention. All right. You weren't noticing what was supposed to be happening. Or you know that if the throw is coming to first base, you're supposed to go back up the first baseman in case he misses the ball. You didn't back him up, so now the ball's all the way over there, and we had to give up an extra base. Now, that's the mental error of you just not being on point and not paying attention. Physical errors will happen to everybody because nobody's perfect. Mental errors should not happen if you are focused and disciplined and you do your homework.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point. And you also related it to sales, which I think is something important for people to take away, because I often say to people, if you're in a slump in anything, but if you're in a slump in sales, for instance, is always go check to see whether, are you executing all of the fundamentals? Are you doing everything that you have done in the past that made you successful? And I guarantee a lot of the times is exactly what you say, Dre. A lot of the times you'll find out that people are either taking shortcuts, they're not focusing, they're skipping over steps, and then suddenly things aren't working out the way they used to.
Exactly. And that's getting back to the basics, and which is what they do in sports. The basics are the fundamentals. And when athletes forget about the fundamentals, that's when they start to falter.
Yeah, absolutely. And then finally, talk to me a little bit about personal initiative and how somebody can be more of a go-getter.
Well, that's your ability to be that go-getter who makes things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And one thing I know for sure, there's an audience of salespeople listening to this, John. If you're not a go-getter, you shouldn't have a career in sales. You won't be there long. All right? You have to be a go-getter if you're going to be in sales, because you have to be willing to initiate conversations. You got to be willing to initiate follow-up. You have to be willing to present what you have, share its virtues and why it's useful for your prospect, or ask enough questions so you know it's useful for the prospect, then tell them why what you have is useful for them. Then you got to ask for the money. And if you're not a go-getter, if you don't have personal initiative, you won't do any of those things. So again, you're not going to last too long in sales if you don't have that personal initiative. And initiative is really where the rubber meets the road, John. It's where you take all the knowledge and information and skills that you have, and you actually put it to use and start actually doing the stuff that you know, rather than just knowing the stuff that you know. So a lot of people know stuff, but they never actually apply it. Right? And what personal initiative is about is actually taking that stuff and actually doing something with it so that it produces a tangible result. And that's how I got on in the sports world. That's how I started building a brand on the internet before it was cool. That's how I got into entrepreneurship. I mean, you can't be an entrepreneur if you're not a go-getter. Not possible.
Yeah, and I think that's just a great point. Is waiting for things to happen to you, or waiting for other people to
Right.
do things. And I think, I mean, and especially today, Dre, if you look at, I mean, if you're in any role, to sales, any other role, there's so much education. There's so much out there that you can use to improve yourself. You know, and there are books like the ones you do. There's so many things you can do to invest in your own success. But a lot of people sit around waiting for the company to invest in them. And I always say, here's a secret. Nobody cares about your career the way you do. Your company does. So if you're not taking the initiative yourself and even developing those skills, you're already kind of like you're outsourcing your future to fate.
That's right. And you have to take that initiative to, if you're going to go anywhere in anything, even if you're in a company or in an industry where they provide a lot of materials for you, you still got to use it. You still have to do something with it. And you're still in competition with your peers. So what are you going to do to put you above and beyond everybody else there? And as an athlete, even though I played a team sport, I always tell people, John, I think I would have been better playing tennis. I'm
Right.
much more of an individual than I am a team sport guy. But in basketball, even, I knew that we had practice, let's say every day at 3:00. I understood that if I was going to get better faster than my teammates, I couldn't only practice when the team was practicing.
Right.
I had to do some of my own practice outside of the teamwork, because then we're all getting better at the same rate. I said, I don't want to be equal to everybody. I want to be above them. So I had to do some extra stuff that they're not doing.
Yeah, and I did. What a great way to finish. I think that's such an important takeaway, is that if you want to be the best, and if you want to excel in whatever your career is or whatever you're trying to do, is if you just do the same as everybody else, you're never going to be, you might be, maybe hopefully you'll be as good as everybody else, but you'll never be better than everybody else.
That's right. You could maybe be equal to them, but if you're equal to everybody else, then what do we need you for?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Right.
Well, listen, Dre, this has been fascinating. All of Dre's information will be below this video. But before we go, please do remind people about what you do.
Sure. My company is called Work on Your Game Incorporated. What we teach people really is taking command of the room. You do that through your presence, through your performance, through your discipline, your accountability, and your systems.
Fantastic. Well, listen, I would encourage people to go check it out. As I said, all the information will be below this video. So thanks, Dre, again. And thank you for watching and listening. See you all again very soon. Thank you.